welcome. This is Business Edge right here on News Central. I'm Tolulokwe Adeleru Balogun. Our headline story, breaking down Nigeria's unemployment and inflation data. 2020 has been a turbulent year for Nigeria and indeed most of sub-Saharan Africa. COVID-19, inflation, and then recession. Nigeria has recovered from the recession, but the recovery is hanging by a thin thread, with unemployment now at 33% and inflation now at 17%. How can Africa's largest economy address these issues? That's our focus today. Welcome. This is Business Edge. Nigeria's Consumer Price Index, or CPI, which is a measure of the rate of increase in the price of goods and services, increased to 17.33% in February. This is the highest since April 2017. Now, according to the CPI inflation reports released by the National Bureau of Statistics, food inflation stood at 21.79%. This is also the highest point for that data since the 2009 data series began. According to the NBS, food inflation also grew by 21.79% year on year compared to 20.57% recorded in January. The report explained that the upward movement in food inflation was caused by increases in the price of bread, cereals, fish, potatoes, and other food items. Nigeria's Statistics Agency also released a report stating that the country's unemployment rate has risen from 27.1% in the second quarter of 2020 to 33.3% in the fourth quarter of 2020. The Labor Force Statistics Unemployment and Underemployment report said this translated to 23.19 million unemployed Nigerians. This means that 33.3% of the labor force in Nigeria either did nothing or worked less than 20 hours a week, making them unemployed by Nigeria's definition. Joining me to break down the numbers further on Business Edge is Wale Makaya. He's a risk and data expert. Wale, welcome to Business Edge. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me, Tolu.
So let's get into the numbers, because these numbers are really startling, particularly for the continent's largest economy. 33.3% of Nigerians are now unemployed, or they were unemployed for the fourth quarter of 2020. On a list that's being monitored by Bloomberg, that makes Nigeria the country with the second highest number of unemployed people in the world. And now this number is also an increase from Q3 2020, where it was 27.1%. So tell us, in the last few months of 2020, what do we know could have caused this increase from 27 to 33.3%?
I think there are some context that need to be set right. The context of how is unemployment measured in Nigeria. You have the total population, you have the working age population, which is from 15 to 64. Then you have the labor force, which currently is about 69 million. Now, what has changed? If you look at what contributes most to the economy is agriculture. And there's high insecurity, especially in the northern states, which is where we have most agricultural activities. Therefore, unemployment is bound to be on the increase because a lot of people cannot do what they are supposed to do to add some productivity to the economy. So largely, this may continue if the security situation in the country does not abate, especially in the northern states. So this is how we're going to be seeing the unemployment statistics going on if we do not attend to the security situation in the country.
Okay, so Wale, let me quickly ask a clarification. In 2009, it was reported that Nigeria had about 80.2 million people in its workforce, in its labor force. And you're saying about 69 million now. Did millions of people just disappear from the labor force, or is there an issue with the numbers?
So the way it is measured is that when you have a working age population, which is 15 to 64, people who are in school are in that band. People are in military service, people who cannot work, maybe housewives, people who are not feeling fine health-wise, and people who decide not to work are all in that band. And that band will continue to increase when we have more population growth. Now, from that population, you have the labor force, which are people that are willing and are able to work.
Okay.
Now, people that are willing and able to work is a chunk of that overall total population. So you have people that are not even up to 14 years, 15 years, and people that are above 65 years, 64 years that cannot work. So that chunk of people that are available to work would increase, will reduce depending on when the employment statistics gather. Especially when you have agricultural activity and there's no activity during that period, maybe during the planting season, there will not be enough people at work. So that statistics will continue to reduce and increase, depending on the activity of people that are not willing to work that are in that space. So, for instance, if the husband is working and is enough to cater for the family, the wife may not work, and therefore that population will reduce. Now, what can cause that population to increase? If we have a lot of people getting out of university, that people that are willing to work and are able to work will continue to increase.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are having a lot of people getting out of university and joining that workforce. Unfortunately, there's no enough jobs in the marketplace to accommodate them. Also, people who have jobs are also losing jobs. Therefore, that population of unemployed people, people that are willing to work and that cannot find jobs, people that are doing nothing, or people that are doing something that is not commensurate with their experience or education, will continue to increase.
Okay. So let's talk in real terms now. 33.3%. That's about 23 million plus Nigerians that don't have jobs at this point, or as of the last quarter of 2020. In real terms, what does that mean for Nigeria's economy? We know there is another rebasing exercise that the Nigerian government is going through with the World Bank. We also know that there's a struggle, there's a recession that the country just exited from as well. But with 23 million able-bodied individuals not working, not because of a choice at this point, but because they can't find jobs, how does that reflect with the Nigerian economy?
So effectively, actually, we have 12 million people that are not doing anything effectively, because according to the way MBS does the statistics, if you are working less than 20 hours, you are not regarded as employed. If you are working between 20 and 39 hours, you are regarded as underemployed. Now, because of that 12 million people that are willing to work and not able to work, it means that productivity of the country will reduce. Irrespective of the fact that population is increasing, and there are a lot of people that are getting old, a lot of people are getting born. So the amount of people that are not active in productivity, that are contributing to the GDP of the country, are increasing. In fact, by my calculation, for every Nigerian worker, there's about 3 people that are depending on them.
3.
At least 3 people. So it means that we would have a lot of people that are not contributing to the economy, and people that are even contributing are actually reducing. And that is a serious problem for the country. They said an idle hand is a devil's workshop. It means that when people have enough time on their hands, of course there will be more children. But much more than that is that people then want to be engaged in anything that they find themselves available, and that is where the country needs to really, really get to work. Because if you have a lot of young people, especially, that are free and able, but they can't find something productive to do with their time, then you have trouble waiting in the future.
Okay. And that's the question I wanted to ask you next. Part of your work is about assessing the risk, taking the data and showing where the risks are. Now, in terms of the risks to Nigeria, what do you see when you have an unemployment rate of 33.3%? Food inflation is at 17% and higher. We know that the average Nigerian spends more than 50% of their income to buy food. Now, that food is much more expensive now. What are the risks to the country when these are the numbers that we have to work with?
Okay, I couldn't hear it very well, but I could hear you asking about the risk that
Yes.
it presents for the country.
Yes.
Now, what is the risk? That one, there are fewer people working and there are more people eating. And according to NBS, 60% of what you earn will spend on food. What it also means is that because of brain drain, a lot of people are getting the students and are leaving the country. So you are going to have fewer people working and a lot more waiting to eat from the little they are getting. And continuously, you will have people that are discouraged about the position of the country because of this situation. People that are going to school are not motivated to go to school. And there's also a danger for the girl child, particularly because people will be thinking, your mates that went to school, what are they doing right now? So education is going to suffer. We are not going to have enough people that are in the production line to get into the labor market because people that are already educated, they can't find work to do. And this circle will continue if there's no way that government is intervening to break that circle of despondency that unemployment is costing the youth and also costing the country.
Yeah. All right, Wale, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a bit more about that gender disparity. It's also noted in the MBS report as well. And then we'll talk about how to turn the numbers around. If we can point out what's wrong, let's also see if we can present some solutions to Nigeria's unemployment and food inflation data. You are watching Business Edge. Do stay with us. There'll be more after this. And this is, of course, Business Edge. We're looking at data released by Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics about unemployment and food inflation in the country. Unemployment in Nigeria currently stands at 33.3%. There's also underemployment reported as well. But my guest is a data and risk expert. Wale, thank you so much for staying with us. Let's get into that gender disparity you did mention in part of talking about the risk. There's also the gender aspect of this report that we also need to take into consideration. The unemployment rates for females in Nigeria as of Q4 2020 increased to 35.2% from 31.6% recorded in Q2 of 2020. Now, according to the report, a total of 61.63 million women were in the working population. That's about 15 to 64 years of age as of Q4 2020, accounting for about 50.5% of the total working population. As we've seen across the world, women are particularly hard hit because of the pandemic, suffering job losses at higher rates than men. So, Wale, what does it mean for Nigeria's economy when we have so many women who are unemployed and who make up a big chunk of Nigeria's labor force?
So, if you look at it by age group, at 16 to 24, male and female are actually at par, which means, in fact, there are more women in employment than there are more women in the labor force market than men. But when you get to 25 to 34, there's a dip, meaning that a lot of women are then not willing to. Women are probably not in that space of being available for work again. And that trend kind of continue, irrespective. Women are still more in labor, in the labor force. But in terms of employment, women suffer more than men. In fact, according to the statistics, it's 35.2%. And for men, it is 31.8%. So even though in terms of absolute number, there are lesser women, but in terms of percentage, there are more women that are not working than are working. And again, because the way it is right now, one single person cannot really support the family in a way to provide a basic living standard. And the more women that are out of that space, the more you have pressure on the other side. And also, if the workplace is not friendly to women, it means that a lot more women are going to be discouraged. And if a lot more women are discouraged, the people that are responsible to send them to school would look at where the ones that are educated are and say, oh, I can't see examples for you to follow, therefore I am not really motivated to send you to school. And that is going to affect the number of women that we're going to have in school. And, by development standards, the more women we have that are educated, the better it is for the country.
Yes.
Because again, the quality of life improves for every child that has an educated parent. So unemployment needs to be tackled holistically, and more so needs to be tackled from the perspective of empowering more women to come into the workplace. And this is both to country and also to organization to create a more work-friendly environment, so that when the woman gets to that point where they start having children, there are consideration for the things that are peculiar to
working mothers,
to them, so that they can really have a better work environment and be encouraged to stay in the workplace.
All right, Wale, there is not enough time today, but I think we have, of course, taken out a large chunk of what the very pressing issues are in the latest figures and data coming from the National Bureau of Statistics. So I'll say thank you here for joining me. Wale Micah, you are a data and risk expert, and you've joined us on Business Edge today to take a look at the new data coming from the MBS. Thank you so much, Wale.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll have you back. So, of course, one thing he said that I've said many times, we have to bring more women to the table, whether it is in Nigeria, it is in Angola, it's in South Africa. The more educated women are across the continent, the better for the development standards of the continent and countries as a whole. So it has to be deliberate, and it has to be intentional, and it has to be now. We're going to wrap up now with NC4 to watch. Let's give you a few stories that we're keeping our eyes on. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria has revealed that the aggregate foreign exchange inflow into the country in the fourth quarter of 2020 rose to 23.60 billion naira from 21.46 billion naira in the third quarter of the same year. According to the Foreign Exchange Flows Through the Economy report, there was an increase in foreign exchange flows through the economy in the reviewed quarter compared with the preceding quarter due to the reopening of many economies, including Nigeria. South Africa's National Treasury has published its updated Operation Vulendelela plan detailing the government's strategy to boost the economy after the COVID-19 pandemic. It is a government-wide approach through which ministers, departments, and entities implement structural reforms, and a unit in the presidency and National Treasury monitors progress and actively supports implementation. After more than 260 NGOs called on banks to withdraw financing for Total's upstream Telenga project and the 1,443-kilometer East African crude oil pipeline project running from Uganda to Tanzania, citing social and environmental damage, Total has published a report saying the projects are being carried out in compliance with the stringent standards of the International Finance Corporation. And finally, oil prices fell on Tuesday, extending declines for a third day as concerns about rising stockpiles in the United States added to the threat to demand posed by countries including Germany and France halting COVID-19 AstraZeneca vaccinations, citing possible serious side effects. Brent crude was down 58 cents or 0.8% at $60.30, and U.S. crude was down 61 cents or about 0.9% to end the day at $64.78 a barrel, after declining 0.3% in the previous session. And that's this edition of Business Edge. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next time. I'm Tolulakwe Adelaru Balogun.